This podcast contains sensitive material that may not be suitable for everyone. The information shared is based on personal experiences and not meant to replace medical or other professional help. Meet Scott McKinley.
Wake up that morning, you have no idea what's about to happen.
When you realized a fire was imminent, where were you and your family, and what did you do?
Well, the fire was starting to creep into the north end of our neighborhood, and there were no firefighters on site at the time. My wife and my neighbors and I, we all got out there and we started fighting the fires ourselves. The flames were 50 feet high. The wind was blowing 60 miles an hour. When Brittany and I once we saw that, we evacuated. It doesn't cross your mind that this is the last time you're going to see your house, kind of a thing.
Then what possessed you to return to the scene and play your bagpipes in front of the cremated remains of your home as smoke still lingered in the air? This moment on video went viral and became a symbol of resilience. What do you do when it feels like the rug's being pulled from underneath your feet? In fact, the whole floor. Welcome to the Uprooted by Unwanted Change podcast about managing life transitions. I'm Kiran Prasad, teacher, speaker, and author of A Mindful Move, Feel at Home Again, based on my 29 house moves. On each episode, we'll focus on a topic of unwanted change, with guests sharing stories of resilience and insights into how they navigated their journeys. Together, we'll discover a community of inspiring individuals and create a system of support for one another. One such individual is Scott McKinley. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us, and welcome, listeners. I'm so excited to be launching our very first episode with you. Today, we focus on being uprooted by wildfire. It was actually the LA wildfires of January 2025 that first motivated me to create this podcast. Well, I was so saddened to see people having to evacuate due to the fires, including one of my relatives. Then later this year, when I heard about the wildfires that took homes in Oklahoma, I felt compelled to share about one family's strength throughout this all. Meet Scott McKinley, product manager by day, musician at heart, based in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Scott plays with the Celtic band Waxy Dargles. He shares his life with his wife, Brittany, their young children and dogs. But on March 14th, 2025, everything changed for them when devastating fires swept through Stillwater, destroying homes, including Scott's. In the aftermath, as smoke still lingered in the air, Scott stood before the ruins of his home and played Amazing Grace on his bagpipes. Now, this moment was captured on video and it went viral and became a symbol of resilience. So, Scott, let's begin first of all by you sharing a little bit about your personal experience or yourself and your family.
So for myself, I'm actually originally from College Station, Texas. My dad was a university professor. And at age 9, I moved to North Carolina. And then at age 13, I moved to Oklahoma, which is where I still call home today. And I've lived there for 25 years. I went to Oklahoma State University. Got a master's degree from University of Central Oklahoma. I've been a very, very active individual throughout my entire life. I have a pilot's license. Let's see, I've been a high school and college baseball and football referee for almost 20 years now. I've done all kinds of things, ranging from I won a national championship at Oklahoma State in cheerleading, of all things, and I also played ice hockey at Oklahoma State. So I've been very, very blessed and fortunate that I've been able to do an awful lot of things. My wife, Brittany, was born and raised in Stillwater, and she's a middle school teacher. And she was also very active in athletics as well. When she was younger, she played basketball and softball. Then we have our two little girls, and they are they're involved in a number of different activities, whether it's swimming or softball, or they both love dance, which I'm still learning to to appreciate. But yeah, so we are definitely an active family. I think that'd be the best way to describe us.
Okay. Tell us about your relationship with change because are you the type of person who thrives on it and finds it easy to bounce back?
I think I found it kind of depends on what it is, because there are certain things that I have found in life that I relish a challenge, and I've always been kind of a person to say yes to something. I try to embrace the idea of, okay, there's something new. Why not give it a shot? But then there's other areas in life where, I love my job. I love where I live. I don't want that to change. Because I think everybody's like that. Once you find something that a place that you really like to live, those kind of things, you hope that never changes. Although in the back of your mind, you always know that things can change at any time in life. That's just kind of the way that life is.
Absolutely. Would you share with us about your wildfire experience? When you realized a fire was imminent, where were you and your family, and what did you do? So many of us have no idea of what this kind of experience can be like.
Well, I think to start with, it's one of those things when you wake up that morning, you have no idea what's about to happen. It's not like you had any time to prepare your mentally or anything for it. I work in Perry, Oklahoma, which is a small town, about 5,000 people. It's about 25 miles north of Stillwater. And I got a phone call about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon that, hey, you might want to head on back. And as I was driving home, I could see that fires were getting pretty, they were breaking out pretty good. In fact, the main entrance where I tried to get into my neighborhood was blocked off already by the police officers, but I knew the back way, so I had to go out of my way to get home. But so I got home probably 2 o'clock or so, and my wife joined me very shortly after that, and there's a field to the west of us. We saw it was on fire. Well, the fire was starting to creep into the north end of our neighborhood, and there were no firefighters on site at the time. So my wife and my neighbors and we all got out there and we started fighting the fires ourselves. We had garden hoses and buckets and towels and anything that we could find. The good news is, at least at that point, is my children and our pets were at my parents' place, so we knew they were safe. They were out of harm's way. The firefighter showed up and they put that fire out. So we thought everything was, we saw some smoke coming to the south, but we didn't really think much of it at the time. And then all of a sudden, probably, we took a couple of items from the house, the firebox, that kind of deal. I put my bagpipes in there. But in the back of your mind, you don't think that you think you're doing this and you're just going to have to unpack it later, right? It doesn't cross your mind that this is the last time you're going to see your house, kind of a thing. And then all of a sudden from the south, I've lived in Oklahoma a long time, and we're used to wind, we're used to tornadoes, but I've never seen anything like that. The flames were 50 feet high. The wind was blowing 60 miles an hour. When Brittany and I once we saw that, we evacuated. I mean, it was literally raining fire. I mean, the wind was blowing the embers probably 100, 200 yards in advance of the fire, and you just see grass fires just popping up as we were getting out of there. So it did get a little touch and go there at the end. But yeah, after that, then we met up with the kids and my parents live about a mile from us, and they had to evacuate as well. So all of us spent the night at Brittany's parents' place that night, and we were very lucky and fortunate that my parents' house wasn't touched, because boy, if we would have lost two houses, that would have been really, really bad. But we were very fortunate with that.
That sounds so terrifying. I can't even imagine being in that position. Then, what possessed you to return to the scene and play your bagpipes in front of the cremated remains of your home with smoke still wafting in the background? The viral video and news story that I watched. That's how I heard about you.
I think so. That was the morning after we had gone. Just okay. We already knew that it had burned down, but we needed to go back and just you got to go back at some point and see it. And I don't know something. I don't know what possessed me to. I think one of the things in overcoming adversity. There's a movie out there that I've always liked. It's called The Legend of Bagger Vance, and there's a scene in there where the little boy is kind of embarrassed that his dad is having to sweep streets because it's the Great Depression and those kind of things. And Matt Damon's character talks to him. He said that your daddy faced it. He stared adversity in the eye and he beat it back with a broom. And kind of my thinking on it is, you know what? I don't have a broom. Mine burned up, but I do have a bagpipe. basically use the tools that you have. And really, it was just trying to bring some comfort because our neighbors were out there too. They lost their houses, and it was just kind of a moment where I could bring a little bit of comfort to them. And also in Brittany's own words, she said that she wants to document it. That okay, we're playing Amazing Grace today, but when we rebuild, we're going to play something happier when the time comes. I do think a little bit it was just okay. This is not going to beat us. We're not going to be beaten down. We've lost our house, but Stillwater's still our home, and and we're going to get through this no matter what or how long it takes.
I really love that. I'm so inspired and awed by your positivity and resilience. Have you always been like that?
I've never thought of myself like that, but I do think that looking back on it, I think the way I've always just approached things is that, okay, if something needs to be done, well, you're just going to have to do whatever it takes to get it done. When I look back, as I mentioned, I've been very fortunate to do a lot of things. So I actually signed to play football out of high school. I was a kicker. I was never big enough to be a linebacker or anything like that, but I had a decent leg. Well, my junior year, I had a bone tumor in my right kicking toe. Well, I had to go have surgery on that. Well, I taught myself how to kick with my left foot. And then by my senior year, my right foot had healed, and I worked hard enough that I was able to earn a college scholarship on that. The other thing that happened my junior year is playing baseball. I hurt my right shoulder, had to have surgery on that, which effectively ended my baseball career. But then I ended up working hard enough to be able to do cheerleading at Oklahoma State, where I was able to hold up another human being with that bad arm. But at the same time, I never thought of that as well. I'm going to overcome adversity. It was just something this is what needed to happen. This is what I wanted to happen. And I'm just going to do whatever it takes. And I'm going to work hard enough to make it happen. The other thing I think that, with both Brittany and myself is that's just the way we were brought up, that, okay, you do what you have to do. And no matter what the obstacle is, you're going to have to find a way to overcome it. So I definitely think Brittany has that exact same mentality. And the other thing that I also would say that we also did with this particular instance is we talked about it, that, how do we make sure that our little girls are doing okay. And we both decided that, what, they will mimic us. If we are strong, if we take care of things, if we do the right things, then they will mimic that as well. And I do think that has worked out well for us, that my daughters have handled this as well as possible.
Oh, that's so great. Children watch us and they do mimic from us. We're their role models. And wow, that's amazing that in cheerleading you used your bad arm to hold up people, because my daughter used to do cheerleading and I know what that involves. My goodness.
Mm.
So you mentioned that after the fire, you stayed the night with family, but where have you been living after that? And how have you been managing? What kind of support system have you had, if any?
So this is one area where we feel like we have been very, very fortunate. So for the first, I'd probably say 2 to 3 weeks, we were living with my parents. I was very blessed that I've got some of the best parents on the planet. They do anything to help us. That was getting a little tight though, with the four of us having to share one bathroom, and so we needed a place to stay. Since then, we've had a rent house, which thankfully it's within 2 miles of our old house. So we can go over, check on things, and it's pretty convenient. So yeah, we've been living in that rent house now for a month or so, I think. It's been very well. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of things in the house. We had to replace the couch, and all right, we had to get a television and those kind of things. But there's a lot of things that we're going to need when we finally do get moved back into the house that we're going to rebuild. But as of right now, I'd say we've gone back to living a minimalist lifestyle for sure.
And I think from what I saw on social media, you had so much support from the community, even with clothing. I mean, people don't realize everything is gone.
Yeah, I'll never forget that first week where we were staying at my parents' house. We were literally having probably 7 to 8 visitors per day. People just coming by, just wanting to help, bringing by gift cards. donating money, donating clothes, just donating everything that we could do. Our community, within a couple of days, they turned the armory into an area where you can go get any kind of food items you need. And it's it's the things you don't think about. It's like we didn't have a can opener. It's those kind of things that when you don't realize how many items you actually use in your house, that when this happens, you just don't have. But the communities have been absolutely incredible. Something that Brittany had talked a lot about on some of the interviews that she had done is still Oklahoma. People don't realize that we've seen tragedies in our unfortunately in our town. So in 2001 there was a plane crash that killed 10 members of our men's basketball team up in Colorado. Brittany and I lived through that. In 2011 there was another plane crash that killed our women's basketball coach and an assistant and some alumni. I actually played the bagpipes at that memorial service there in Gala Arena. Then we also had another situation where we had a car that drove through a crowd of people at a homecoming parade. So it's one of those things. This community has seen tragedy before, but it's absolutely incredible the way that the community rallies around the people when they need it. I think the difficult part for Brittany and I this time is we're usually the ones that are wanting to go in and help. And this time we were the ones that needed help. That was more unsettling to us than anything because we want to be the ones that do the helping, not the ones needing the help.
Oh, how lovely. And I think something I didn't mention and you could share is that it wasn't just your home and your neighbors' homes. I mean, do you know how many homes were affected in Stillwater or maybe Oklahoma?
In our immediate area, there was almost 100 homes that were completely destroyed. I believe in Oklahoma, I think I heard the number was close to 500 total,
Oh,
which that didn't include, other buildings damage. Our neighbors to the north, their home made it, thankfully, but they had a lot of smoke damage and some other damage to the back part of their property. There's people that they may not have lost their homes, but they're still having to deal with insurance. They're still having to go through some things that's definitely not pleasant. I think the other thing I would mention that I think is kind of unusual about this in Oklahoma is, in Oklahoma we're pretty used to tornadoes out here. We understand the risk. We know in the spring to pay attention to those kind of things. But I would have never thought a wildfire would have taken the house. That's just something that's not something that we really have had to deal with out here. So that was that definitely caught me off guard for sure.
yeah. And I think everyone feels, oh, it's not going to happen to me. This happens to other people.
I was going to say, yeah, that's the weird thing. It's almost when it happens, it's almost surreal because you just in the back of your mind you think that's never going to happen to me. So it's almost a surreal time to go there and you realize I just slept in this house last night and now it's gone. I mean, that's a very unique feeling. The other feeling that kind of came over me was that first day I looked in the mirror and I realized that the only clothes that I owned were the clothes that I was wearing. That kind of struck me a little bit. But at the same time, I told Brittany I can't make it all better in one day, but I can make today better than yesterday, and literally take it one day at a time.
Yeah, I love that. Have you been able to go back to the site of your home to try to recover anything? Because I know in the video it looked like ash and rubble. What was that like? Did you find anything intact?
Well, it was really trying to think, what did we find? So we did find there was a porcelain cross that my youngest daughter had in her room, and somehow it survived. And especially knowing it was on the second floor, somehow it survived. But beyond that, there really wasn't much of anything that we could recover. That was an interesting thing that when the insurance adjuster was talking to me, he said, he sees disasters all the time, and he said, tornadoes are bad. Don't want to belittle that in any way, shape, or form. He said, but fires are worse because with tornadoes, a lot of things can be recovered. In a fire, it takes everything. I mean, there was literally nothing left. It even took my little pedal boat that I had down it was sitting in the water, and now it's been melted. So, yeah, so it literally took pretty much everything.
That's hard losing so many things. I know the most important things in life are not things, but still, was there anything sentimental or irreplaceable you felt?
Handful of things that were just, man, I wish we hadn't lost that. My wife lost we had a 125-year-old piano that had been family heirloom. Um, but that was probably the heaviest piece of furniture I've ever moved in my life. That was very, very heavy. We lost that. I lost a number of my kilts. I lost all my yearbooks from when I was in school. We lost the girls' baby books. We lost those things. So there's a handful of things that we lost. But at the same time, we've had a lot of people ask me what's it like to lose everything, and my response, and I understand what they mean, but my response to that is we didn't lose everything. We lost some things. And that's just kind of the way that we've approached it, because at the end of the day, the memories are still there. My kids are still safe. My pets are still safe. I've still got music. If anything, I feel like I'm going to be stronger and a better person because of it. That's just the way I choose to approach it. I feel like, and this is a commentary on society. I feel like as society we are too attached to things. We have really gotten way over attached to things. And I think something like this just brings home that what really matters is the memories that you have of your family and your friends, and being able to spend more time with your family and your friends, because those are the things that I really cherish.
I totally agree with that sentiment. Inevitably, we're going to feel grief in such a situation. Grief is still underlying, but this helps, this strong positive attitude, because you're not focusing on what you've lost. You're looking at what you still have left in your life. Is there anything else that's helped you through the grief process?
I think, I mean, obviously, my wife is a very strong person as well. So are my parents. So are her parents. Our church family has been absolutely phenomenal. We go to a little bitty small country church up there in Perry. And there's other people in our community that have lost their houses, whether it was through a tornado, or we actually had somebody that we know that they lost their house in a fire too. Just talking to them, understanding what we needed. I think for me, the most difficult part is one, I'm trying to grieve for losing the house, but I knew that I had to get to work on getting through the steps in the process to making things better going forward. And I think the challenge for me with that is that's a process that obviously I'd never been through. My wife had never been through. So having people to help us better understand insurance, better understand even taxes. There's tax implications on things like this. It's those kind of things that you just don't, you have to deal with it, but at the same time, you're trying to deal with grief as well. I would liken it. Obviously, it's not the same when you go through the death of a loved one. You're grieving because you lost the loved one, but you're also having to deal with, you're having to deal with the paperwork, the death certificates, dealing with the funeral homes, those kind of things. And in some ways, you kind of, for lack of a better term, you almost kind of have to postpone the grief until after you can get these other things. You're so focused on the task at hand that you never actually allow yourself time to truly grieve what happened to you.
Mhm. And Scott, you mentioned about your children that try to be a great role model for them so they can mimic. Also, have you managed to create a sense of normalcy since then? Because it must be so much to process. Through the many unwanted changes I've faced, I found getting back to some regular routines, especially for my children, it helped provide an anchor amidst the uncertainty and chaos.
Yes, that was something that Brittany and I talked about very early on, that we wanted to keep the girls. So we were lucky. They love going to school, so they went back to school the very next week. We got them back to doing their activities. Like I said, they love doing dance and swimming and those kind of things. And the other thing is and this goes to the community, that it seemed like there for a while they were getting a new toy every single day from somebody in the in the community. So they thought that was pretty neat. Um, but I think getting back into some kind of a routine. We're trying to plan some type of vacation this summer with them. Like my oldest daughter played in the elementary school talent show, and I was able to play with her the other day. So I think that was good. We kind of tried to shield them. We've been under a lot of stress. I think anybody would understand that, but we don't want them we don't want to transfer that stress onto them. At the same time, I also want to be able to use this opportunity for them to develop their own resilient minds as well. We want them to see how, I want them to remember how their parents handled a situation like this, because at some point in their life, they're going to face adversity as well. I think that was at the back of my mind as well, that I want my kids to develop some of that. But again, we've shielded them from some things, but other things we want to make sure that they know what's going on, and we communicate it with them.
Hmm. And is there anything that surprised you the most while going through this wildfire experience? What surprises did you face?
I think for me, I mean, obviously, having to deal with insurance, building a house, all those kind of things. I think what amazed me throughout the entire process was how many people wanted to come in and help, how many people donated, how many people did, just even just the little things, and sometimes it was people that I hadn't seen in a very long time, but we were friends, 20 years ago. I think if nothing else, it's kind of been um, I think that there's a lot of ugliness in the world. That's just kind of the way this world is. But I think sometimes we forget that there's a lot of good people out there, and because we had people that helped us from multiple countries. We had people of all different races, of all different backgrounds, of all different political affiliations. It didn't matter. They just wanted to help. And I think that that's something that we, in our society today, we don't hear enough of that. That, your neighbors, there's actually some pretty good people out there. And that's another thing that I would say that when I lived in North Carolina, we lived through several hurricanes, and there were houses that were destroyed in my neighborhood. Luckily, ours, we didn't have any damage then. And it was the same thing I found out, here is the people that are going to help you are your next door neighbors. When something like this happens, it's going to be the people living right next door that are going to be the biggest help for you. It's not, it's not some agency or anything like that. It's going to be your neighbor that's right down the street, that's going to help you. And I wish I had my house back, but I also love having the knowledge of how many good people there are out there, and that I know I've got people I can count on, and hopefully they know they can count on me if something like that ever happens.
And knowing what you know now, Scott, would you have done anything differently?
Oh, I probably would have had a bigger garden hose. No. Oh, no. I mean, it, it's hard for me to look back and say that anything that we did was wrong, right, whatever. It's actually a good question, because I haven't really had time to sit back and reflect on it. I think I think the biggest thing that I have learned throughout this whole thing is that, yes, these things can happen to you, and it's one of those things that you need to be. It's not that you can't prepare for every outcome. That's not realistic. But what I do think what is helping is that knowing that no matter what comes your way, that I know how I'm going to handle it. And I think that would be the biggest thing that I look at going backwards. But like I said, this is something I never thought would happen, but once it did happen, I knew in the back of my mind, this is how I'm going to handle it. And I think that's all that you can do whenever adversity strikes.
And what coping skills through all this time have you seen in yourself and others that have helped you through this time? Were there specific coping skills?
I think I think for me, what helped me was focusing on the task that you got. They say work is good for grief, and for me, it was focusing on what the next task needed to be. The immediate task, and those tasks have changed as your needs will change when you go through this. Because the first day we needed a change of clothes. Luckily, we were very fortunate that we had a place to stay, because there were people that, they had to go get a hotel room because they didn't have family that lived nearby. But then it changed from, okay, now we've got enough clothes. Okay, now we need a place to rent. Well, now we've got to start worrying about, we need a little bit of furniture in there. Then it turned into, we need to focus on, well, now we've got to get the lot cleared so that then we can eventually start working to rebuild. So to me, I think the biggest thing what I looked at is just I focused, I kind of consumed myself with what's the next task that needs to be completed. And again, that, like I said earlier, that kind of makes it to where you don't really have time to grieve, but the good news is that's allowing time to pass, but you're also being able to get certain things done that you're going to have to get those things are going to have to be done.
Yes, I'm sure your to-do list just keeps growing. I was thinking of you as a project manager, your project manager skills, because this is a project to manage.
Yeah, it's and I think the the most difficult part of this is knowing what's the next thing that you need to do. You've got all these things that you need to do, but for a while there, I'm having to deal with insurance. I'm having to deal with some FEMA stuff. Having to deal with we do have a builder. Now we're having to look at architectural plans. So it's kind of it's project management, but you don't know exactly what the next step in the process is. So you just start making some phone calls and asking questions. That's really all you can do.
Yeah, tell us, Scott, you mentioned about rebuilding. Tell us a little bit about your rebuilding efforts right now, where you're at with that. And I love what you said about that you're rebuilding in the same spot and you're looking forward to the block party you're all going to have at the end of it. So tell us about your rebuilding.
So luckily the lot has been cleared, and it's ready to be rebuilt on. So now we have a builder. We're working with an architect. That's one of the one thing that I would say that I would tell everybody to do is double check your insurance, because I would check our insurance once a year, as most people probably do. And our home was insured. If you go off the market value, what the county assessor says that our house is worth, we were insured, absolutely properly insured. But when you look at the replacement cost on that, replacement cost has gone above and beyond that. So we are going to have to build a little bit of a smaller house, which that's okay. And we're still going to be able to have a nice house. But the thing with building the house is we at least we're able to take things that we did like from the old house, and then we're also going to be able to take things that we didn't like from the old house, and we're going to be able to change them. We had a detached garage, which we never liked, because in Oklahoma it's either 20 below zero or 111 degrees, as we always say around here. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, it's the weather in Oklahoma is something else. But so there's a number of things that we're going to be able to change. And I'm hoping, I think we may be able to break ground on the new house. I'm hoping maybe July, August timeframe. We still got a little bit of work to do, with planning. I think for a while there, things were moving very quickly in getting the house, getting everything cleaned up and cleared off. But now we're kind of in a pattern where it's going to be a little bit before you see progress at the site. But there is work going on behind the scenes.
I'm so excited for you all. And are there any other insights or tips you want to leave listeners with about facing wildfires, if there's anything else?
Yeah, the one thing that I never, when you think about fires, you think about fire safety on the inside of the house. You want to make sure that that your stove isn't going to light the curtain on fire. Those kind of things. But you never really think about outside. We still don't know, and we probably never will know exactly how the fire got started. And it actually got started with our house. The one thing that I do know, because with that 60-mile-an-hour wind, it was embers that were flying out, and we had some vegetation that was very close to the house. I wonder if that caught it. Another one that they talked about that can do it is if you haven't cleaned out your gutters in a while and you've got dry leaves up there and an ember catches there, that can catch it. So that's just the thing I'd say, just from a wildfire standpoint, is we always think about fire safety on the inside of the house, but if you're in an area where it's possible there could be a wildfire, to think about some of those things outside. Where do you have vegetation? Have you cleaned out your gutters? All those kind of things.
Those are great points. I would have never thought about that. And if our listeners would like to reach out to support your rebuilding efforts with you and your neighbors, how can they do that? And we'll try and list that information below as well.
So yeah, so we have several GoFundMe's that are out there. The main one I would say is the one that was created by my band, the Waxy Dargles. And it's just been unbelievable, the outpouring that people, and a lot of people on there. We see the names, and I look at Brittany, I'm like, do we know them? And she's like, no, we don't. It's amazing that there's people out there that don't know me, will never get to meet me, but yet they want me to know that I'm cared about, and that there's somebody out there is wanting to help.
That's great. And if our listeners would like to contact you to reach out to support your rebuilding efforts? How can they do that? Where would they go? And we'll try and list that information below as well.
Yeah, I'd say the best way is on GoFundMe. Those donations are safe and secure, and everything it goes directly. Basically, that's where we're at right now. Is we're in rebuilding mode. There's a lot of things that we're going to have to spend a lot of money to try to get everything rebuilt. And Yeah, I'd say that'd be the best way to do it. And even if it's not a monetary donation, you know what, we just the support, even people that have given us kind words and words of support, that those help too.
Great. And Scott, I feel honored and I really appreciate you being here today. I know you're so busy with all that's going on, but I'm sure you have inspired so many, many people today with your resilience, your ability to rebuild your life, and even help others along the way, because I know you have been doing that. Now, if you enjoyed listening to today's episode and found it helpful, please subscribe, share, and join our Uprooted by Unwanted Change Facebook group. We would love to hear from you. In the midst of chaos and uncertainty, may you find peace and rootedness. And on that note, we're going to close out to some of Scott's wonderful healing music.